Hey everybody, it's Nick. This is Learning Rocks, where usually we do videos on how to make rocks look cool with experiments, but today I'm going to do kind of a multi-stage video on this rigid R4092. It's a 10-inch wet saw. The motor, when you plug it in, will spin, but the blade doesn't turn. And this is what I found. So I'll walk through real quick of how this comes apart. Basically, the only tools you're gonna need for this entire process is a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a crescent wrench. I lied. A hammer and some kind of a punch will come in handy with this as well, just for one step. Generally, you'd be seeing a blade on here. You can basically just remove this stuff and get it out of the way. Back here on the handle, you've got 2 screws up top. You got 4 screws underneath. Once you pull that handle up, you've got basically this little button that comes up. So this is your button to turn your laser on, and it's connected to this. You got another little connector there. There's a little hole, so when you do remove this shroud, this guard here, it's going to come through that hole. So you want to make sure you disconnect this so you don't end up breaking that on accident. Next step is you've got 4 screws on this shroud, on your little safety cover that we need to remove. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 sitting on there. Up here, you can see that's the hole where your cable's going to come out of. And when you put it back in, you got to make sure you line that back up to come in. All of this now, you can just kind of hang it off out of the way. These would be in tight. So once you pull that out of the way, probably going to want to use a screwdriver to go around. I had to kind of go around easily and give it a couple taps side to side to loosen it up. This is your gearing here, where your motor is going to interlock with that, and that's what's actually turning your blade. So if your blade is not turning, you can see how cruddy and gross that is, and all these metal filings. So if we look up in here, you see some gearing up at the top, and that is completely chewed up. And you can see all this crud is just filings and grease mixed together. All right, real quick, before you go any further, make sure you check the bearing at the back of your blade drive motor in the center here, because mine was completely frozen up. So check that, put some grease in there, and make sure that that is spinning freely before you go any further and tear anything else apart. So to get that part out, you've got your case here. You've got 2 black caps right here, and these hold some brushes in. That's your brush. Once you pull both of those out, you'll see you got 4 screws here, and just kind of pull this thing off. And you shouldn't have to give it too much force. If you're really forcing it, then something's jammed. So check before you screw something up. And then this unit is basically pressed into this giant knuckle here. I'm just going to get a punch on it, on the end of that gearing. Boom! So here's the guts of the motor. And this is the part that should be driving the blade by linking up with this gear. You can see it's like perfectly cut up where that gear should go. First of all, you can see that all the teeth on that drive gear are in place as they should be. And another thing is it comes with a bearing. You can see that bearing is still up in there seated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this thing out because I want to use the new one. And I've got just a punch that I'm going to try and use to knock that out. There's the culprit. This is the old one. Still got some good life in it, but hey, if you got a new one, might as well throw it in. So we got this all cleaned out really good. Originally, this part came with a little paper just a piece of paper gasket around here that of course got ruined when I put it on. So I'm going to see if I don't have some RTV. I think I've got some RTV laying around. All right, we found some RTV and a little bit of grease. It's just green waterproof grease. So heavy duty stuff. And I'm going to use this just to keep things moving. And then I'll also put some on the motor side when I put it in, just to make sure those gears link up and have a nice smooth ride. Now I want to keep this surface as clean as possible here as I'm doing this, because that's the side I'm going to put the RTV on. That's good. And I'm just going to put a very light, I mean, you really don't need much at all. Just going to put a super thin coat here. Like I said, it's not like it's holding fluids in or anything. It's just mostly to try and keep it dry in here from the water. So now you can see we got a little coat of grease on the gearing and just a light layer of RTV here, that silicone sealant on the back side just to keep it clear. And I'm going to go ahead and fit it up in here. You can see the gears now, and how surprisingly that gear is not turning at all. Stand by. What's happening? When I first put it in, I think it was just stiff from not being used for so long. But I checked this brake to make sure that, because this brake is working properly. And so I put a crescent wrench on it just to kind of see if I could get it turned, and it popped right loose. So I don't know if yours is, not turning once you put it back to this point. I couldn't figure out what exactly would be stopping it, but I think it was just bound up because this thing hadn't been used for so long, and it's spinning just great now. So if that's the case, just try a little crescent wrench on there, see if you can't get it to break free. You're probably not even going to have that problem, but I figured I'd put it in there to let you know what I found while I was in here. Now we'll go ahead and get this new motor put in. As I said earlier, I was a little worried that I was going to have to pound this in. I still might now that the new gearing is in. But when I gave it a test fit, it did slide right in there. There we go. Just take a little bit of wiggling. So, spinning free, feels good. So now when I turn the motor, you can see that the blade section is spinning. So now we can put motor back on. So you're going to ease this on. If you're forcing it, something is wrong. So back it off and try again. And then we can put our screws back in. It is now turning in there. These were the brushes for the side of the motor. You can only really put them in one way, which is nice, so you can't really screw that up. That black cap holds it all in place. Now that we've got the motor back on, we got all the gearing cleaned up, everything seemed to be turning. Those brushes, it's still going, so hopefully that's good. And before I go any further, we're going to give it a little test run to see if we got it. Hey. Looks like we got a tile saw running. All right, we got the motor running. The blade should be turning. We're just buttoning up all the stuff that we took apart. Okay, we got the switch plugged back in. All right, we're just tightening up the 4 screws on the bottom of the handle here. And we got 2 screws on the top of the handle. Okay, that's done. Now we're going to rig the water pump. Hose and everything comes down into this bottom reservoir. And on the back you've got a outlet. This water pump's pretty basic. It's like a fish tank pump almost. Looks like you got a max and a minimum controller on here. So you're all just manual. Pump is set. Moment of truth. Well, that's good. The blade fits. Neat. We got this thing topped off to the proper level, and you're able to turn this thing on either full time or to have it only turn on when the blade is on. So right now we got it running, so that's good. Off, and that's set to only turn on when the blade runs, which should turn on now. All right. We got water running, so that's good. Sweet. So there you go. Sweet find. Price is right. A little bit of extra work. We got a saw, so now we're going to test it out with a couple of rocks. But in the interest of not making this video too long, we'll make this a separate video. So if you'd like to see this thing actually cut rocks, because as I said, I got it not to be a tile saw, but to be able to cut some rocks, some nice straight lines on some rocks. So if you'd like to see how these turn out, go ahead and check out the next video we come out with here. Thanks.